こんにちは、皆さん。ビジネスサクセスジャパンのポッドキャストへようこそ。Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Business Success Japan podcast. This is your host, Lydia Buchelman. My main goal here is to create an easily accessible resource for those who want to develop Japan-specific communication skills, especially in business. While I can't and won't promise to make you fluent in Japanese, I hope that you will walk away from each episode with a skill, piece of information, or shift in mindset that will help you be more effective in your interactions with Japanese business people. Before we get into today's interview, I want to quickly go over a little bit of Japanese with you. The word we learned last week is simply the word for no in Japanese. Iie. Iie. This week, I wanted to bring up how to appropriately respond to another person thanking you in Japanese. If someone says thank you or arigatou gozaimasu in Japanese, many resources will tell you to say dou itashimashite, Japanese for you're welcome, in response. However, that phrase actually isn't commonly used because it can come off as arrogant in the wrong context. The only exception is maybe saying it to someone who's roughly on the same level or lower than you. But even then, people would still often want to downplay the importance of the favor they did for the other person. This could be done using the phrase とんでもありません。とんでもありません。とんでもありません. As this phrase roughly translates to, it's no big deal, the word no, or iie, can be used instead with a similar meaning. Or they can be used together as in, iie, とんでもありません. So today, I have another awesome interview to share with you. It ties in really well to last week's episode on Nommunication, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. But I want to apologize for the audio quality ahead of time. I've done my best to make sure that you can understand what Minae-san is saying, but it's not as clear as the audio in a lot of my other episodes. I'll do my best to improve the audio quality in future interviews, and I encourage you to listen anyway, because Minae-san has a lot of awesome information to share with you about Japanese business culture. So without any further delay, let's hear what Minae-san has to tell us about doing business in Japan. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to have another interview today. This time it's with Minae Sawai, who is currently living in Eastern Michigan at an organization called Gen J, which works to promote grassroots connections between Japan and the Midwest and southern parts of the United States. It's a program that not only creates better cultural understanding between US and Japan, but by doing so, it creates a foundation for deeper Japan-US relations in the future. So Minae, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit more?
Of course. So my name is Minae Sawai. I am a cultural exchange facilitator in Michigan with Gen J project. It stands for Grassroots Exchange Network Japan. And this program sends cultural exchange facilitators and Japanese language supporters to the US who provide grassroots exchange activities for 2 years. From October 28 to September 2020. I only have 6 months. Let me introduce a little bit more about my project, Genjay. So this program is basically introducing Japanese culture to the US, especially in the southern states and Midwestern states. Then they send 10 people in 7 states, which are Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, Georgia, Indianapolis, Texas, and I'm in charge of Michigan.
Thank you. So what are you doing specifically?
Yeah, actually, like our colleagues, 10 people in the southern and Midwestern states, they do very different activities. It all depends on the area that they are sent to. And in my case, in Michigan, I am based at JBSD. It's a Japan Business Society of Detroit, which is the kind of a Japanese organization to Japanese companies in Michigan. And I have two kinds of main activities. first one is Japanese just cultural introduction, like introducing origami, calligraphy, tea ceremony, something like that. And the second one, I also had Japanese business culture introduction. Like, Japanese business is sometimes really specific. So I introduced some Japanese business manner to the employees. They work at Japanese companies in Michigan.
That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds like some of what I do with my the companies that I work with too. And it's really, really important. Do you see any results from that with the companies you visit?
Yes. Actually, like there are too many companies and I cannot support all the Japanese companies. Just like regarding the number in Michigan, like believe it or not, there are 500 Japanese companies in Michigan. So some companies, I think they go very well, but for most of the companies, there is many cultural gaps between them. So I'm trying to fill the gap between them. In totally, I visited, I forgot the number, but around 17 companies in Michigan. And yeah, I could meet Japanese and local employees there. And yes, they before doing the activity, I usually conduct the needs assessment at the company, and I want to get the idea what kind of problems they have or what kind of communication gap they create. And most of the company, it seems like there is a kind of communication problem they have because they don't have enough time or place to talk. But when I have a lecture or when I have a kind of workshop there, it's kind of great opportunity for them to talk each other. So even though there are many gaps, it's kind of good. It's kind of great to talk in person and directly so that they can accept their like culture gaps or what they think, something like that. That works.
Yeah, that's awesome. So today you wanted to tell us a little bit about groupism specifically and how that looks in Japanese companies and maybe why it causes such a problem for Americans looking at Japanese companies. So can you tell us a little bit about what is groupism?
Okay, yeah, groupism is kind of it comes from the culture matters actually. But in contrast to American, they go individualism, and Japanese has kind of groupism culture. For example, Japanese don't like to be alone or to do things differently from others. They stick together, like eating, working, or traveling in a group. So following others and being part of a group gives them a kind of carefreeness and joy. But this kind of culture coming from like many factors. Growing rice, we have to grow rice to make corporate or team effort is kind of was important. And one more thing is culture. Like we really hesitate to ask something to the others. So even so, like yeah, there is one example that like if we are talking, like this is kind of conversation time with local people and one Japanese. And we are talking in English. English is our second language. And if we don't know the language or if we don't know the phrase or don't know the vocabulary, most of the time or like most of the Japanese people, we are hesitate to ask them because like we feel it's kind of rude to ask and to disrupt conversation. So what we do is kind of we are trying to like we are pretending to understand that. Oh, okay, okay,
Mm.
something like that. But in our mind, we don't know. But we cannot ask them. For the like speakers, local like native speakers, even even though they cannot read their like hearts or their minds, they may think, oh, okay, you are understanding me. You have no problem. But
Right.
in our mind, like this is kind of our groupism culture. We don't want to um like be rude to others. We want to like take the same step with others. So yeah, this is kind of a good example.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure it's something that anybody who has especially been in business situations in Japan has probably experienced. It's
Mhm,
almost like for the good of the group who's involved in the conversation. If one
mhm,
person doesn't understand,
mhm.
that's just kind of a sacrifice you have to make.
That's right. Yeah, and I've experienced in the meeting also. Yeah, it's not only happened to the like other countries speaking like native
Mm.
speaking English countries. It happens in the only Japanese meeting also.
Oh,
Like
really?
yeah, even though we don't understand, like okay, my boss is talking like that, but I don't know. But it's their business. It's not my business. So just like let them talk. Then they're
Mm.
not gonna participate actively. Then kind of it finishes. So it's kind of a bad case of the example, like how do I say, groupism culture.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's our groupism thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, it of course it all depends on the personality. Not all
Hmm.
the Japanese go that way. Of course, some Japanese people make questions if they don't understand. They don't hesitate to ask any questions. It's totally up to the personality. But like we have a groupism culture, it sometimes happen and it makes the kind of culture gap between the people from other countries.
So, what does it say about what Japanese people value versus what maybe Americans value in relationships, in business, and getting along with other people, that sort of thing?
Like American like individualism, which American have, and groupism, which Japanese have, is kind of totally um opposite side of the thinking. So
Mm.
um I am sure like American people or people from people who has individualism culture, they totally don't understand what why we go that groupism way
Hmm.
until they don't know the culture like Japanese business culture looks like. But
Mm.
I've seen or I've shown um like I've seen the result from the questionnaire or surveys that first of first stage American people who goes business with Japanese, they'll be um kind of surprised or they have no idea what they go like. But
Hmm.
um the time or experience of those programs, so they will be getting know, okay, like Japanese has this kind of groupism, so what we should do, and they are trying to kind of make a good relationship with Japanese, and sometimes Japanese people like getting used to the kind of situation to show their opinion in front of the people or in public, then they are trying to adjust themselves how um, how they can work well together.
Mm.
So it's kind of a great example,
Mm.
like very good way. But uh, I feel that, but the time or experience they are needed. So it's all because it all comes from the relationship between them. So to build a good relationship, it's kind of taking time. So maybe, of course, 1 year or 2 years, 3, the time will like be a good kind of solution for them. But personally, I think like if kind of a system, or if they have a training or idea beforehand, maybe they can just like get in the meeting and get in the business. Then this is a thing we learned before, so they can easily adjust themselves to build a good relationship. So yeah, of course we have different ideas in our mind from the culture side, but yeah, it's kind of I'm thinking how we can solve the solution.
Right. It's hard because if there was an easy solution, everybody would already know. So,
Oh yeah.
but if you had a piece of advice, so for example, if there was one American working in a team of all Japanese people who maybe aren't aware of how an American would usually work in a business context, how should that American try to behave to kind of avoid any sort of issues with the Japanese people who have this different mindset?
I think, yeah, kind of first impression is important for everybody. So, this is just one of my opinions, but I recommend them not to kind of be offensive to them. Like, why you don't understand? Why do you take that actions? Why do you take that way? Something like that. If like Japanese people feel that kind of offensive manners from like others in business, they may be easily like wanna take a distance from them. So the way I suggest is kind of try to listening or try to asking a very easy way. Okay. I understand that individualism is kind of very speedy and decision making is really faster than us. But like sometimes, yeah, like we take really slower, cautious steps. So yeah, of course both way has negative and positive points. But the important thing is kind of the negotiating what the best way between us. So yeah, kind of a thing.
So maybe try to be less direct, be a little bit softer, and be a little bit more patient.
Exactly. Yeah, patient. Yes, I've heard many times like from native speakers, oh, we need to be patient to others. Yeah. Thank you very much for your patience. But yeah, patience to like each other is kind of the best way for kind of solution, I guess.
And of course that applies to any cultural interaction, intercultural interaction, but I can see how that would be especially important between Japan and the States, since so many things are just completely the opposite of each other in terms of how people are supposed to behave.
That's right. Yes. Of course, difference is not like not too bad. Like I think the way of thinking, like kind of enjoying the difference is kind of the key point for each of us. Yeah. Oh, you think that way, but I think that way. So what the kind of like how can we like compromise our idea to be the middle point or something. So yes. So we need to enjoy the difference first.
Definitely. There's a lot everyone can learn from interacting with other people who have these different cultural ideas. And everyone benefits when people take the time to learn more about other cultures. So it's definitely worth any time and effort people put into it.
Mm-hmm.
So on the opposite side,
Mm-hmm.
if there was an all-American team and
Mm-hmm.
then one Japanese person,
Mm-hmm.
and the Americans didn't really know anything about Japanese culture,
Mm-hmm.
what types of things could they do to try to make that one Japanese person feel more comfortable working with them?
Yeah, that's kind of a hard situation for one Japanese.
Yeah.
I easily imagine.
No group.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Actually, honestly, I have lots of ideas to suggest for other, like, except one Japanese. But maybe important points is kind of try to slow down speaking and kind of easier like visual effects like for writing is like, yeah, I understand that discussion should be kind of actively made. It's kind of necessary for a like good meeting, but if they speak too fast for the non-native speakers, we cannot catch up anything. But writing helps us very well. So if some of them write down the important points on the whiteboard or somewhere, and we can have the idea. So through that point, okay, this is the topic for now, and this is the important thing, and I can, suggest or I can be involved the discussion. Well,
Yeah. So just being very sensitive of, because people aren't working in their first language, just taking it easy, being very conscientious. And especially since in Japanese culture, people are less likely to ask for clarification, just maybe offer it every once in a while, make sure that people really understand what's going on. And yeah, I think it's always good for people to make sure that everyone's on the same page, but maybe just take a little bit extra time and effort to make sure that that person really understands what's going on. I think that's very helpful.
That's right. Yeah, I think, if they try to take care of the one Japanese too much, maybe it will take lots of time. So just like not one, but some important points are only needed to be shared with them, like with the one Japanese guy, if they have a meeting.
So get down the most important stuff. Make sure everybody's on the same page with the important stuff.
And if he or she doesn't speak a lot, maybe like in some point they can ask his idea. And maybe kind of I can suggest one idea that kind of the icebreaker part, like for 1 or 3 minutes to have a active and smoother meeting. They can have just like talk really, and it's kind of the meeting for not too offensive, not too speedy and something like that. It's kind of of course it depends on the purpose of the meetings, but 1 to 3 minutes icebreaker works well for discussion for everybody, including non-native speakers.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, is it just important to get the other person comfortable talking in front of the new people? Is that kind of the barrier?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That makes a lot of sense, especially if it's not your first language. You kind of need a little bit of practice leading up to it before you decide to share your ideas. So, was it also important for people to kind of make sure that the Japanese people in their team have time to offer their ideas? Should people make a point of asking, hey, Minae-san, what do you think about this?
Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, if yes, maybe it's kind of hard for us to speak whole part. Yeah, if they have several ideas, they can easily do so. But if like as you talk to me, like you point out one idea, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of this? Maybe it's super clear for us, so we can answer it very well, easily.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So, how does Nommunication connect to all of this?
Yes, Nommunication. It's really kind of the word which I like.
Yeah, it is a really good word.
Yes. So for the definition of the Nommunication, it comes from nomu, drink, like Japanese verb, and English word communication. It's combined Nommunication and Nommunication. It's kind of not business word typically, but it's similar. It's often used in the Japanese business smoothly, going smoothly. And yes, Nommunication, speaking to Nommunication, like if we have a kind of, yes, there is a one work site, one business work site, and yeah, Japanese people likes going out after work with drinking. So, and it's kind of mandatory stuff if our boss asks us for going out for drinks. Even though we cannot drink, we don't drink a lot. It's kind of one of the communication style, just like talking beyond the work. When we off to the work, no, no, when we finish working, we can like have a place to talk at the drinking places. And yes, usually Japanese business persons, it's called salaryman, they like to discuss what their boss is like and on the working time, something like that. It's kind of one style of the communication. And this Nommunication works well for the good communication. Like if we've done the Nommunication together, we feel like getting closer relationship we made. So when we work on the working night time during the working time, when we done the Nommunication, we feel like kind of similar idea of the kind of working.
That makes sense.
Mhm. Considering the alcohol harassment or work time reforms, the Nommunication is the style of the Nommunication has to be changed because some younger generation cannot drink alcohol a lot, so the boss cannot force them to drink alcohol. Yeah, you don't have to drink alcohol if you cannot drink, but when boss invites them to ask for drinking outside, it's kind of for me, I have to drink one sip or one glass or something. So it's kind of getting the problem in Japan now. So there is one part of the Nommunication.
So, why is alcohol such an important part of Nommunication?
Because like, well, maybe it's happened to the people who drinks alcohol, all the people who drinks alcohol, that like if we drink, we can like we feel like relaxed to talk anything they want.
Yeah.
Right. So we can talk whatever we want with drinking power. So it's kind of one style, one how to say, like, yeah, it's really it really works for the good talking without.
Why do Japanese people not have these conversations at work? Why do they only have them after work?
Yeah, that's a good question because we are too serious to work.
I see.
Yeah, they think like we think productivity is important for working. So when we work during working times, we have avoid like chatting with others because it borders for their work and as well as mine as well. So we try to focus on working only during the working time. So
That's interesting.
yeah, it's kind of if they chat or we chat, like we think it borders of the kind of productivity. So yeah, it's kind of we try not to do so. But yeah, sometimes I feel like American, like when I work in the US and when we chat, it's kind of works for the good relationship as well. So sometimes we can get the good information with chatting. So yeah, I think American people do that kind of communication style during the working hours.
Right.
And yeah, it's kind of productive as well. So there is good and bad. Like it's a difference of cultures. Like Japanese people go the communication style. Like after we finish working, we do communication. But American goes the kind of how do I say like just communication during working hours. It's also good way. We cannot judge which one is good or not good. Just like
they're just different. Yeah, it just shows how important it is to make good relationships and how much of a priority it should be. But yeah, definitely different ways of approaching it in America versus Japan. We have no problem chatting during work hours in the States. That's for sure.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, sometimes I'm surprised that like for example, when we go to the Target or Myers, the supermarket, and cashiers are chatting with like each customers, even though we have a long line. So it never happens in Japan. So like cashier has to be like cashier is under pressure for everybody is watching. Like you have to be in hurry because you have a long line or something like that. So cashier tends to not to talk a lot with customers, but just like welcome, thank you, something like that. But like American cashiers talks a lot, like how are you doing? How was your weekend? Something like that. Yeah, it's kind of fun, but like sometimes Japanese people may think, why are you chatting under this situation or something like that.
I feel that way at Target sometimes too. So yeah, definitely guilty of that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that people should know about Nommunication?
In older days, in older times, communication is kind of was happening a lot, and it was very important for kind of business networking as well. But nowadays, the number might be reducing because of alcohol harassment or work time reforms. Yeah, it still exists, I guess.
Yeah, is there something about Nommunication that you think Americans could learn something good from?
Nommunication. I've had one example that like it's similar with communication, but one of my friends agree with the idea of karaokeation.
Oh yes.
Yes.
I think I would like that one better.
Yeah, it's combined word with karaoke and communication because like at the karaoke, people who don't sing well, like people who like singing, they can if they go to karaoke together, it's kind of team building. Yes.
Team building. That makes sense.
Yes. It's a kind of great idea for team building with communication. If we go together to karaoke, so we sing together, even though we're good or not, just like, singing together. And we can like have a good time together. So communication, karaoke is also kind of good way for team building.
Right. So maybe the drinking part isn't the important part. It's just the building relationships so that you can communicate better.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. But I've heard one example that one American employee working at Japanese company, he had a business trip to Japan, and on Friday, after 5 o'clock, they arranged the kind of welcome party for him, only for him, and like many people working at the department gathered for him. So he was so surprised. Like after they worked over 40 hours a week, then Friday at night, but many people were gathered for him. For me, it's kind of natural and it's normal. But like for him, it's kind of like after work on Friday night, especially, it's a very precious time for him and for everybody. So they usually go straight home, and they have a time with family. But they did like the people who gathered for him was kind of canceling his family time. Then they gathered for him. So it's kind of he was so surprised for how Japanese people are like committed to nommunication with everybody.
Oh, that's awesome. It definitely goes back to the importance of groupism, like everybody giving up a little bit of their individual time for the good of the group because he was joining the group. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense in broader Japanese culture, but giving up our Friday nights is not something Americans like to do for a work activity. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, maybe sometimes it's good. Like all the time, like every Friday or like every month, it's too much. But like, yeah, sometimes it's like kind of good, like way for nommunication with others.
Right, maybe somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So it can be related to groupism, nommunication, or something else, but what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding foreigners have about Japanese culture?
Yeah, speaking to the like business aspects, I think like most of the local people may think Japanese is kind of too shy to speak out, or they don't have any idea in front of everybody, something like that. But like Japanese people, they are sent to the US or they are sent to the other country, they have to like force themselves to change their style to the like following the country style. Like in case of the US, we have to show our opinion even though we don't speak perfect English or other languages. We have to like tell them. If we don't do so, like the working cannot like operate well, cannot be done. So yeah, I want them. It's kind of not misunderstanding, but yeah, there is always cultural backgrounds, and we are trying to we have no choice to adjust. Like we have to adjust myself to the different culture. So at least I want them to understand that kind of fact. We are trying to adjust ourselves.
Right. So just again, be patient.
That's right. Yeah, maybe first big step is kind of taking time for them, but like we are trying our best to fix ourselves.
Right. So maybe understand That if somebody looks like they're not doing anything or if they look like they don't have an opinion, maybe they're just having to work extra hard to do anything, let alone have to contribute extra more than they're used to, maybe in their home country.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, just adjusting to a new culture is exhausting. I
Exactly.
know that from experience. And if people could have a little bit more empathy, I think that would be very helpful with
Oh,
international business.
yeah. Absolutely. And I want to suggest them or ask them to keep motivating them. Like, I know it's kind of too much work for them, but like we are trying to speak or we are trying to be a perfectionism. So, but it's okay for them, even though we make mistakes or it doesn't have to be perfect. So I want like local people to facilitate them. It's okay for making mistakes. Like you are allowed to do anything, something like that.
Yeah, is there a way that people can do that without maybe hurting people's feelings? Because I know if you're a little too pushy or if somebody gives a half idea, like a not perfect idea, and then somebody's like, oh no, we can't do that. Maybe it would hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah, I think it's kind of it doesn't how do I say, like maybe it's taking time and it's kind of a step by step process. So yeah, like small step, like piling the small steps are really important, I guess. So maybe we have a kind of ideal purpose or ideal goal or at the level of 10, let's say. Yes, level of 10 is the kind of like ideal relationship, ideal communication style. But like I think if we start from the 10, level 10, maybe like for us it's kind of too high and we feel like it's too like it may take time to reach up to the level 10. So in that case they can start with level 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can step up the level one by one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Try not to rush into communicating perfectly, just take things one step at a time.
Yes. Maybe they can start with a small chat. The most important thing is kind of like having the interest to others or communication. So if we feel like, oh, you have no interest to me or something like that, the communication doesn't work well. So yeah, listening to others well, showing interest each other might be a like good tips for better communication.
So is there anything else that people tend to do that might hurt their relationship with Japanese people?
Yeah, it's kind of similar with what I talked, but like speaking too fast, like native speed, and if we use the difficult, like specific words or slang, which we don't understand, we feel like, yeah, we don't want to bother the kind of funny chatting. If they making laugh, if they look funny, we don't want to bother what that mean or something like that. So, but even though they are laughing, if we don't understand the like point of the conversation, we feel a little bit isolated with the communication. Sometimes it happens if between the native speakers, it's natural, so it's no problem to talk. But if there is a group, they have a one or two other some non-native speakers, they may have a kind of difficulty to understand the native speak English or kind of specific words. So it's kind of important to have the feeling to enjoy the chatting with all together in a group.
Yeah, so just be inclusive
Mm-hmm.
as much as you can and be mindful of
Mm-hmm.
it's hard when you're so used, especially if you don't speak another language, it's hard to know what words are special and which ones aren't, but just trying your best goes a long way for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So on the other side of that, is there anything you've seen Japanese people do that could hurt their relationships with foreigners?
Yes, for Japanese people, it comes like it many sometimes happens that like Japanese people hesitate to look their eyes during conversation. It's kind of our way for showing respect to others. If we are not familiar with chatting, like chatting during, like we are not familiar with watching our eyes each other during our chat. So it's normal for us, even though we don't look our eyes a lot. But maybe for like American people or people from other countries, they have a culture to watch their eyes during the conversation. They may feel kind of it's rude and it's rude if they look at their eyes a lot. So it might be hard.
Yeah, I think it's a hard thing for a lot of countries because there are countries other than Japan where not making eye contact is a sign of respect.
Mm-hmm.
But in America, especially, we take it as a sign that the other person just isn't trustworthy, which makes it very difficult to build a relationship if you feel like the other person could be lying to you. So, yeah, just if Americans can be aware that it's not a sign of deceit, it's not a sign of like feeling awkward or anything. It's just slightly different than what we're used to. So definitely something to keep in mind. They're not just lying to you. It's just a different way of going about conversations.
And one more thing, like, yeah, I've already talked to this point as well, but we are kind of hesitate to ask questions even though we don't know or we don't understand well, because we don't want to border the discussion or we don't want to, yeah, like it's kind of a shame to ask questions if we don't understand. This is our comes from our cultures. So, but like people, like local people may think, oh, okay, you understand my what I talk, but eventually, if they don't understand anything, they may be embarrassed. Why you didn't ask me something like that? So yeah, in my heart, the relationship with foreigners. Yeah, we are trying our best again.
Yes, everyone is trying their best. So, do you have an example of a time that you had a misunderstanding with intercultural communication?
Yes, like, yeah, like Japanese people, like I, yes, I had one experience for intercultural communication misunderstanding, that we have a culture that we don't clearly say no, just vaguely say no. So, for example, like, do you want to do so? Maybe to this question, answer should be yes, I do, or no, I don't. But for Japanese people, we may say, kind of, it's hard to do so, or like, I may do so next time, or let me consider something like that. So we are hesitant to say no clearly. So I had an experience that, like, I wanted to vaguely say no to the offer, or, like, for example, yes, speaking to my kind of dating, one man asked me for dating a lot. and I was texting with him. But after I once met him, saw him, I feel like I want to keep the relationship with friendships with him. So he was asking me for next date, but I vaguely said no. And because I have a boyfriend in Japan, so maybe next time, like in the future, bye bye. And I stopped texting to him. But he didn't realize that my message was clearly no. So, oh, what's the problem? Even though you have a boyfriend, he's not here in the US, so you can still date me. What's the problem? Why you don't text me back? Something like that. And I feel so like how do I say, like embarrassed with that his accent. Why you don't understand me? I like at my place, at my opinion, I vaguely said no, I have a boyfriend, but he still texted me. So I feel like I should have clearly say no, I'm not interested in you or something like that. Or I am busy and I have no time to text with you. So yeah, eventually in a conclusion, I learned from this experience. I should say clear. There is a time I should clearly say no.
Yes, being clear about no's is definitely important in the States. But to be fair, he probably shouldn't have kept texting you if you said you had a boyfriend. So there's that too. It wasn't your fault.
Oh yeah.
It was also just him. So not all American guys are like that. Don't worry about it.
Thank you for your advice.
So what is the most important thing someone who is going to Japan for business should know? So if they got off the plane and they only knew one thing, what would that be?
One thing. It's really hard. Well, maybe I can say to be polite as much as you can. Like Japan is extremely polite. So in many ways, like we have ojigi, bowing, or respective words. It's called keigo, or something like that. So, but in many cases, if you go politely, it will be no problem. So, of course, we understand for foreigners, we don't expect foreigners also follow our way or follow our style. So it'll be no problem if they make mistakes or if they don't follow us. But like if they go politely, just like try to be nicely, try to be good for yourselves, like attires or postures, something like that. It'll be no problem.
All right, so just do the best you can to be polite and to be nice.
Yes,
that sounds like good advice for everyone.
But for Japanese learners, for Japanese learners, I can say if you know like polite or respective words, keigo or business card exchange stuff, it will be absolutely plus. So it will be advantage. We'll have a good impression to them. Oh, you know that, something like that. You can be standing out.
Yes, so it is not a waste of time to learn some Japanese, but if you don't have time, don't worry too much about it.
No.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today. You had some social media that you wanted people to be aware of?
Yes. Thank you for mentioning about that. Yes. So thank you very much again for having me today. And I have several social media accounts like on YouTube, Facebook page, and Instagram stuff. So if you are interested in, please check them out later.
All right, and I will put links for those in the description of this podcast if you want to check it out. Otherwise, if you look up Jen J and Michigan in Google, you should probably be able to find the information there. She has the Facebook page especially is pretty easy to find. And is there anything else you'd like to say to people before we head out?
Yes. Speaking to this situation, like we have to stay at home. Like our first priority is safety first. And in this situation, I sincerely feel like the fundamental life is the kind of our necessary and first priority. So entertainment or this kind of in-person outreach activity face lots of difficulties, honestly. Under this situation, entertainment brings fun of our lives. We need like jokes or laugh in our lives under this situation. So we can call that a quality of life. Like Japanese culture, like I hope I can like bring entertainment to you in some way, and I need someone like some organization like you to work together for quality of life. That's all.
All right, well, thank you again so much for your time. Again, I'll be sure to put all of her information in the description of this episode, so feel free to get in contact with her, check out her YouTube videos and all that. I will talk to you guys again next time. Bye!
Bye-bye!
I hope that you got a lot out of today's interview. The ability to look at things from another person's point of view is, of course, an essential part of looking at life, but that's even more true when it comes to working with people from different cultural backgrounds. Since relationships are so important for being successful in Japan, you should definitely do whatever you can to prioritize building rapport whenever possible. And be sure to check out next week's episode on karaoke or karaoke in Japan. It expands more on what Minae-san said about karaokecation, so you should definitely subscribe so you don't miss out. But in the meantime, remember that the more you learn, the more confident you will become as you explore all of the opportunities Japan has to offer you. So if you found the information here today useful and you want to hear more content in the future, please consider leaving a review. It really helps other people find the show. And of course, if you have any other questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes or interview topics, please email me at businesssuccessjapan@gmail.com. Until next time, mata kondo!